There was a formless actuality before heaven and earth developed, lonely, isolated, independent, unchanging, revolving unfailingly, able to be mother of all things under heaven. Not knowing its name, I call it Tao. This beautiful vision of truth was written by the 6th century sage and spiritual teacher, Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu is one of an extraordinary triad of individuals included in this series, who all lived in the 6th century BC, and who all had a profound effect on the history of China and the consciousness of humanity. The other two are Lao Tzu's contemporaries, Confucius and Buddha. Of these three men, only Lao Tzu recorded his teachings. What we know of Buddha and Confucius was passed down orally after their deaths by their followers and disciples. But Lao Tzu left us a special gift, a tiny volume of his wisdom called the Daodejing, that has sold more copies than any book in history other than the Bible. Through this inspiring little volume, we have come to understand the teachings of Lao Tzu well. All other information about him, including his life, is apocryphal, that is, based on stories and legends that may or may not be authentic. Even then, the information gives us only the barest sketch of his life, and no real portrait of how he looked or sounded, or what his demeanor was. Generally, he's pictured as an elderly man, mostly bald, with a fringe of hair around the sides, a long, straight, wispy beard, and serious eyes. He's often depicted on the back of an ox, partly because this was his chief means of transportation. Historians believe that Lao Tzu was born about 575 BC, about 12 years before Buddha and about 24 years before Confucius, although the exact birth dates of each are a matter of speculation. These three teachers, along with the Jewish prophets and the Greek poets, artists, philosophers, and scientists, raised the 6th century BC to a zenith of human wisdom and achievement. It was one of the most spiritually vital periods of human history. Lao Tzu was born on a farm in the province of Hunan, in south-central China. One legend says that when he took his first breath, he laughed, although all other babies cry. Another legend says that he was born a white-haired old man, thus his name, Lao Tzu, which means the old man, or the grand old master. You will see the second part of his name spelled a variety of ways, including Tzu, Tsu, and Tse. They are all the same man. Lao Tzu was given his name after he became a master. It's believed his original name was Li Er. Some stories say that Lao Tzu was always a recluse, lost in meditation. Others say he was a sociable friend and a good neighbor. Scholars believe that he eventually became an historian or librarian. He is said to have been the keeper of the archives in the imperial court, where he gained fame for his knowledge and wisdom. Lao Tzu was unhappy at court. It distressed him to be surrounded by men who, claiming to be rulers, were in fact ruled by their own desires for power, wealth, and fame. He was interested in greater rewards, those that came from living in harmony with nature and its divine forces. At some point, Lao Tzu became a wandering scholar, much as Confucius did later, and people came from all over to seek his advice and hear his teachings. There are stories that one of those who sought the old man's advice was Confucius himself. It is said that Confucius, who was a political and social reformer, sought Lao Tzu's counsel on how to succeed in affairs of state. But in response to Confucius' efforts to change government and society, Lao Tzu said, "He who wants to have right without wrong, order without disorder, does not understand the principles of heaven and earth. He does not know how things hang together. Can a man cling only to heaven and know nothing of earth? They are correlative. To know one is to know the other. To refuse one is to refuse both. Can a man cling to the positive without any negative to contrast with it? If he claims to do so, he is a rogue or a madman." Confucius could not understand or align himself with Lao Tzu, but when he left the old man, he said to his followers, "Today I have seen a dragon." It was the ultimate honor. To the Chinese, a dragon is a rare celestial being of great power and positive force. It represents divine energy as it courses through matter. Chinese representations of the dragon often show the dragon holding a pearl. The pearl is a symbol for internal change, change that is actuated by the divine energies of the dragon. It is the pearl that opens the way for these energies so that transformation can occur. In the times of Lao Tzu, many men were hungry for transformation and change. 6th century China consisted of several feudal kingdoms that fought among themselves. These constant wars plus famines, and the oppression and high taxes forced upon the peasants, made it a challenging time to be alive. While the peasants suffered and struggled, the rulers grew more and more wealthy and less concerned with the welfare of its people. Lao Tzu's response to the increasing chaos around him was quite different from that of Confucius. When he recognized that the empire was in a state of corruption and decay, he decided to retire to the mountains of the west, near Tibet. At the age of 80, he set out in his ox cart for the border, intending never to return again. But before that final crossing, destiny would require one more task of the aged wise man, a task that would become his greatest contribution to his fellow man and to history. When Lao Tzu approached the frontier, the guardian of the pass recognized him and guessed at his plans to leave China forever. He begged him to stay long enough to write down his teachings. Some say it was a condition of allowing him to pass. Lao Tzu promptly sat down with 2 scrolls and wrote a slim volume of only 5,000 Chinese characters. Then he mounted his ox and disappeared into the misty mountains, leaving us as mysteriously as he'd arrived. The small book he left behind was called the Daodejing, which loosely translates as the Book of the Way and the Virtue. The words of this book were later engraved in stone in every capital in China, but this would have meant little to Lao Tzu. He would have preferred that men live the Tao. These few episodes are almost all we know of the life of Lao Tzu. Even after his disappearance, his remaining life was a subject of legend and speculation. Some say he lived for 200 years more. Some say he never died. To the Confucians, he was a noble philosopher. To the peasants, he was a saint and a god to be worshipped. To the rulers that followed, he was an ancestor of the emperor to be venerated. To the Daoists, he was the bringer of the word and one of their greatest divinities. The book Lao Tzu composed, the Daodejing, is made up of 81 short sections. More than half of these are in rhyme. The remainder consists of popular sayings and teachings written in prose. The word Tao has no exact translation in English, nor for that matter in Chinese. Its meaning goes beyond words, which would never capture its broad and eternal essence. Lao Tzu himself said, "The Tao that can be talked about is not the unchanging Tao. The names that can be talked about are not the unchanging names." The concept of the Tao existed long before Lao Tzu. It is the primordial or original spiritual system of China, and it predates history. But it was Lao Tzu who simply and brilliantly summarized it. In English, the word Tao is often translated simply as the way. In reality, it's more than the way. Tao stands for divine life, for the essence at the core of all the energies of life. It is the unifying force that makes us all one. To live by the Tao is to live at one with our true being. Thus the Tao is both the way and the goal. It is everything, and it is also nothing. Although Taoism is often called a religion, it is not a religion. It is also not a set of rules nor principles of conduct. It is more of a perspective or a knowing. Over many centuries, the principles of Taoism have pervaded every aspect of Chinese culture. They have given rise to an almost endless number of colorful gods, immortals, heavenly palaces and paradises, divine rewards and punishments. Because Taoism lacks an organized church, popular rituals have developed instead, many of which revolve around magic, divination, medicine, alchemy, astrology, and varied ceremonies. Certain schools also have priests and temples with golden altars, gongs, and incense. The priests conduct public rituals during which they submit the people's prayers to different gods who represent different aspects of the Tao. This is the popular Taoism of the masses that centers more on supplication, ceremony, and symbol than it does on the principles of Lao Tzu and his teachings. Yet there are still those who follow a more pure and personal form of Taoism. We'll explore some of the basic principles of Taoism now to increase your understanding of how Lao Tzu influenced the culture of China and the thinking of his contemporaries and their descendants. To begin with, Lao Tzu recognized that although the universe is in constant change and motion, there is an essence that never changes, and that essence is the Tao. Unlike most spiritual systems of Asia, Taoism doesn't seek escape or liberation from the world. It strives instead to bring one into harmony with all the forces that guide life. This process of harmonizing oneself is referred to as riding the whirlpool, or as we say in the West, flowing with the currents. In order to blend with these currents, one must cultivate an emptiness within. Daoists call it non-doing, or wu-wei. In this case, doing nothing means not resisting. It means remaining tranquil in the midst of change. It's a key principle of the Tao that yielding overcomes force. Every willful effort or any intervention in the natural course of things, sooner or later, results in the opposite of what was intended. Therefore, it results in failure. But this doesn't mean the Taoist simply bends as a tree in the wind. The Taoist doesn't merely accept. Rather, he harnesses these energies. He amplifies and serves them. He works with them. Lao Tzu said, "The master acts without doing anything, and teaches without saying anything. Things arise and he lets them come. Things disappear and he lets them go. He has but doesn't possess, acts but doesn't expect. When his work is done, he forgets it. That is why it lasts forever." The emptiness within that Taoists speak of also refers to the cessation of desires and wants. Once desire is dispelled, there is only quiet, silence, and peace. The truth is free to enter, and man is free to hear and heed it. There are basic differences between Daoism and Confucianism. Confucians believe that people must have the help of a well-disciplined society to be able to lead lives of goodness and nobility. They focus on ceremony, morality, and duty to family, friends, and society. The Daoist is not influenced by social conventions and obligations. He leads a simple, intuitive life, preferably close to nature. Confucianism addresses itself to the creation of a moral and political system, whereas Daoism concerns itself with more personal and metaphysical issues. Confucius was concerned with man's relationship to other men, while Lao Tzu was concerned with man's relationship to divine forces. Confucius too used the word Tao, but he used it to mean the way of society. Yet both philosophies also share many similar ideas about humanity, ideal society, and the highest function of rulers. A Taoist speaks of the realm of heaven and the realm of earth. Heaven is the source of creative energy. Earth is the field of action. Heaven is represented by a circle, earth by a square. Man is located between heaven and earth. In that position, he is the integrating force. He reconciles the opposite principles of heaven and earth through his body and mind. In China, this role of man is most fully represented by the emperor. The ideal emperor harmonizes the impulses of heaven working through the earth. This emperor has a divine role, and thus his symbol or mascot is the dragon itself. These opposites and polarities, heaven and earth, are depicted by the famous symbols of yin and yang. The literal meaning of yin is dark side of the hill. The literal meaning of yang is the sunny side of the hill. Yin is the earth, female and receptive. Yang is heaven, the male, positive energy. To the Taoist, everything in creation is either yin or yang, and all these things move together in infinite combinations. The yin-yang symbol shows these energies in perfect balance. When they balance and merge, these apparent opposites attain a higher level of union. That balance and the resulting transformation is the ultimate goal of the Taoist sage. Taoists are advised to always incline toward the yin, the receptive female energy. The Tao itself is symbolically low and receiving like a valley. It's soft and life-giving as water, and it's the female and mother who is the source of life. To the Taoist, men should prefer femininity. They should become yielding as the yin, and flowing as the water. Water overcomes what is hard and strong. Water takes the low ground and reaches places nothing else can reach. Water never resists. It finds its own course. Symbolically, the perfect Taoist is like water itself. Taoist art often reflects this principle of yin and yang. Polarities, or opposites of subjects, colors, and materials, are paired, contrasted, blended, and balanced to create harmony. There might be a picture of a bird flying into a garden of peonies, a dragon amid swirling clouds, a combination of red and blue ceramic glazes melding together. Artistic materials are made of the 5 Chinese elements, earth, wood, fire, metal, and water, each of which has special meaning. Foods too have yin-yang energies, based on their color, texture, taste, and nutritional content. The blending of foods extends beyond high cuisine. It's meant to illustrate high spirituality. Directions also have yin-yang properties. South is preferred over north because it holds yang energy and power. Therefore, many Chinese temples and houses are built to face a southern direction. Principles of yin and yang are also applied to clothing and fabrics, to landscape and design, and to breathing and exercise. Tai Chi exercises performed daily by millions of Chinese were designed to stimulate and balance inner currents and energies. And traditional Chinese medicine draws upon the idea of adjusting these currents for health and general well-being. To the Daoist, man is a microcosm, or small universe, that corresponds exactly with a macrocosm, or larger universe. His body duplicates the plan of the cosmos. The 5 organs of the body, and all its orifices and conditions, correspond to mountains, sections of the sky, the seasons, directions, and the elements. Blood circulates because rivers carry water. The body has 360 articulations, or joints, because the year has 360 days. And the interior of the body houses the same gods that inhabit the universe. The Daoist concept of yin-yang applies to the balance of energies in space, but there are also changing energies in time, and that is where the famous book the I Ching comes into the picture. The I Ching, or Book of Changes, is an ancient oracle that pictures changing cycles of time through 8 trigrams. These trigrams represent every basic process of change and growth. When they combine to form hexagrams, 64 of them, they show how different energies and qualities merge, and how opposites turn into one another. The hexagrams were intended to be used for meditation, but over the centuries, they become a favorite source of fortune-telling and divination. It's believed that the very act of consulting the I Ching brings one into direct communion with the energies and currents affecting one's life at that time. The I Ching became popular in America in the 1960s, when there was a renewed interest in mysticism and the occult. Because of the important link between the energies of the body and one's well-being, Daoists once saw old age itself as proof of sainthood. An ordinary man decays from the moment of birth on. Every desire and ambition, all worldly longings and possessions, all superficial knowledge drains and disperses his energy, thus robbing him of vitality. But a saint has freed himself from such distractions. Inside he has attained emptiness and nothingness. Therefore he has flourished. He contains an unceasing well of vital energy that sustains his body years longer than the ordinary man's. Daoists believed there were many methods through which an individual could restore the pure energy with which he was born. These methods could lead a person to become an immortal, or Shun, who could live 1,000 years in this world if he chose, and then ascend to heaven in broad daylight. In summary, the Daoist believes every person is allotted a portion of pure energy and life force at birth. The challenge is not to dissipate it by the cravings and activities of the senses, but to control and strengthen it in order to live out a full and lengthy life. Death to the Daoist is simply the partner of life. They are paired in cycles just as winter and summer are, just as night and day are. Life and death are not opposites, but 2 aspects of the same reality. Man, when he dies, returns to the weaving machine, to the great loom that issued him in the first place. Therefore, death is neither to be feared nor desired. As the history of China progressed from the 6th century BC to the 1st century AD, Lao Tzu advanced from sage to god in the minds of his followers. Although originally he was largely believed to be a wise teacher, an advisor, or a translator of ancient truths, he gradually became deified. To many followers, he was omnipresent and omnipotent, not just a messenger for the Tao, but the source of the Tao. It's unlikely Lao Tzu would have appreciated such glorification. He wrote, "One who displays himself does not shine. One who justifies himself has no glory. One who boasts of his own ability has no merit. One who parades his own successes will not endure." But Lao Tzu did endure. Over the centuries, Daoism underwent many changes and adaptations. It became blended with Confucianism and Buddhism. Certain rulers and emperors adopted it and modified it. Schools and sects developed practices and rituals around it. Teachers and writers that followed Lao Tzu elaborated and reinterpreted some of his principles to suit the times and their own personal beliefs. But no one has ever improved it, and it was never possible to refine it further nor to make it more eloquent. The perfection of what Lao Tzu accomplished remains. Daoism, along with Confucianism, has shaped Chinese life for over 2,000 years. There is a popular story about a Chinese official many years ago who was buried with the writings of Confucius and Lao Tzu in his left hand and those of Buddha in his right. He was a typical Chinese. These 3 great men who lived so long ago, the philosopher, the saint, and the god, are as alive as ever in the vast devotion which they still inspire. All 3 encouraged mankind not to focus on pleasing the gods, and not to look to external sources for their salvation, but to work and take responsibility for developing their own nobility and perfection. They instilled in man the sense that he is an active participant in his own spiritual growth. Although all spiritual systems became invisible in China under communism, the teachings of Lao Tzu had long before found their way to many other Asian countries, including Japan, Vietnam, and Korea. They also began to see some popularity in the West in the 20th century. Yet there are scholars today who doubt that Lao Tzu even existed. They argue that he is only a legend. There are still other scholars who accept his existence, but who claim he was not the author of the Daodejing. That, they say, was written by others who came later or before. These doubts would never have disturbed the old master, he who flowed like water, who rode on the wind, and who knew that dark was only the partner of light, said, "Perfect activity leaves no track behind it. Perfect speech is like a jade worker whose tool leaves no mark." Lao Tzu's life has left no track and no mark, but his book, which took, they say, about 2 hours to write, has left tracks over 2,000 years of human history. It is a remarkable feat for a book which openly admits that what it defines is indefinable, that what it speaks of cannot be spoken, and that what it teaches can never be taught.